All right, welcome back. All right, I want to thank P&N for their work on working on the UPSU agreement. So is there a motion to pass the UPSU agreement as discussed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you for the work, Mr. Perry, Kara, and everybody on that committee. Moving on, discussion and possible action on the 2023-2024 school meal prices. Mr. Reese?
We have a handout for you. Business and Planning reviewed this information. It's just, there's been some changing of the labels just to make things more clear, but I'll hand that out now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ken.
So we are, Business and Planning met about the lunch prices. This is a challenging time to deal with lunch prices because the price of milk, the price of eggs, just like other things, affects not only the house, but also the food we serve children. So you can see the first column row, the first row of purple represents the recommendation that the Business and Planning had for lunch, and the second row for purple describes the recommendation for breakfast. We believe this puts us about where we were pre-COVID. With conservative numbers, we are potentially $70,000 in the negative, which we hope to not be there. In the past few years, we've not had that at all. It really depends on the state reimbursement, which does change. So we currently are carrying approximately 3 months of expenses into next year. So we don't believe we are going to have the overage next year, but we believe this recommendation puts us in a pretty good spot and doesn't affect families more than it needs to.
So can I, tiered for, where on the first line where it says recommendation tiered, how are you, how's that tiered for, like off of what?
So, sorry, I could have. So if you look at the former, all the $1.60s over the years, our breakfasts, no matter where you were the same. With the difference in what we serve for food, with in terms of portion sizes and what is actually sold, we thought it would be better to move from the $1.60, no matter if you're at the elementary school or at the high school, to the second row of purple, which changes it to a tiered structure of $2 at the elementary school, $2.25 at the middle school, $2.25 at the high school. So it just changes it. It's not the same all $1.60. So we moved it over to the other chart. So.
Oh, I got you. I was just looking at that one line. I didn't realize it was that tiered.
No, that makes sense, and it made me think for a minute. We also pushed milk up to 75 cents. Milk had been the same for the last 10 years, so it's probably appropriate.
And then just for the high school, so the elementary and middle, we moved up a quarter, but the high school, we kept the same? We didn't move that up a quarter too?
Correct.
So, any particular reason why that was the only one that didn't move?
So we're trying to find the balance. We're trying to stay in even numbers. The costs are similar. You could push high school to $4. I think there would be some that would feel like more. You know, the $3.75 is still in that a more reasonable range, $4 may feel like it's an infringement somewhat, or a lot, so. Again, practically, it's probably not, but
And I only mainly say it because if you have, I think for parents who have elementary school or middle school kids, they're all getting an extra cost, and our high school parents kind of get the push through.
no, I understand the thinking there, so. And again, I didn't mean to take away from business and planning, so I was just trying to get you started, so.
I think keeping it at the 375, because you have middle school and high school parents, so you try to keep that a little bit even, and keep it under that $4 mark right now. I think there's a lot of families that are struggling and, you know, either don't qualify for the free meals or don't want to apply for the free meals. And, you know, we have a lot of them up here that get granola bars or get fresh fruit from teachers and things, so try to keep that down as much as possible.
Trace, anything?
No, I agree with the plan.
Terry?
No, no questions. You actually asked the question I had, so.
Thanks. Brian?
No questions.
Jim? Kara?
You just have to edit the second dollar figure for the milk. Sorry to point that out. It's in there at 7 cents instead of 75 cents.
07, oh yeah, the decimal point.
All right. That sounds good. Patty, anything else from business and planning on it? No? All right. With that said, is there a motion to approve the 2023-2024 school meal prices with the one edit that Kara had mentioned?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, discussion and possible action on the scope of work for the East Haddam School District indoor air quality and HVAC system. Mr. Reese or Mr. Reese? Ms. Stricker?
Either one can go first. So on the grant that we asked, the grant we put in for HVAC earlier this year that was due 12/1/22 has essentially been reauthorized. And so we learned a lot from that. When I spoke to you a couple weeks ago and said the state is able to give us some assistance and help us with what will be helpful to get us to be awarded the grant if we can talk to them before 8/1/23. After 8/1/23, they go into a competitive bidding market, and we're not allowed to speak with them about anything about the grants. So that pushed our timeline up a little bit to at least have in mind what we would like CIP to focus on. And CIP, our Capital Improvements Committee for the town, for the elementary, for the schools, asked us, you know, to get a focus of what we're thinking is going to be the plan going forward. Essentially, we talked about in business and planning that probably the plan going forward should be to really do whatever we can to move forward on the complete plans, to make it so we can be ready to move it into the grant for the elementary and the high school. We would leave the middle school off the grant proposal, because the grant does not pertain to anybody schools that are less than 20 years old. And the middle school's 20-year birthday isn't for another 3 years. So that's one proposal, but I think after that is done, the idea is that we really think the planning should be done, that all 3 schools really should be affected, to just address 1 school or 2 schools and have them be up to par, state-of-the-art with HVAC and indoor air quality, and leave the middle school not, is not going to be what the community is looking for. So you know, the motion that we're trying to give you an idea, and I don't say motions, but we're trying to give you, you have that somewhere, right? The motion we kind of drafted out for you. Should be in there. Yep, of course.
So, just for anyone that is listening or goes back and listens, I would recommend that you would go back to the business and planning meeting and listen. We had Scott come in, and Scott is from the architect from LE Lens. And we went through all of the priorities of the district that were handed out on the page 6 of our document. And a lot of them are maintenance things that eventually these things are going to break down. So we're not going to have a choice but to repair them. The hope is that we can get some of the grant monies for it, and then if we are successful with achieving everything, which is highly unlikely, but let's go for it, then we go full forward. If not, then we really have to look at what the grant monies will cover, and hopefully it'll be something, and then readjust accordingly to add things into the capital plan that are really essential. For example, one thing that he brought out, which is the third one down, the elementary school, is replacing the classroom UVs with fan-cooled units and outdoor, air systems and things, and the building automation system. Well, what was interesting to us is to find out that the recommendation is actually to do that before you do your roof. Whereas, what we thought, maybe you would do it after a roof, so that way you're putting units on a fresh part. That was incorrect. So there's a lot of other work that will have to be done as far as looking at the ages of roofs and where we are with warranties and how it's going to adjust. It's going to become, I would say, Brian, pretty complex when we have to start breaking this stuff down.
Yep, agreed.
Does anybody have any questions? Kara, I'll start with you.
Well, I also echo Patty's, that go back to our, what was it, last week's meeting? Business and planning meeting. It's very, very informative, and it's definitely something that has to be done. And if we can get a grant to cover, likely 50% of the costs of the elementary school and high school, that would be great.
Jim?
Ditto. I think we ought to get as much out of the grant as we can and be prepared to make adjustments as needed.
Thank you. Brian?
So, Patty, we're still gonna continue to propose for a middle school in the gym area.
So the high school and the elementary school will be included into the grant. The middle school is not included in the grant because it's less than 20 years old. What we will do is include it in the project, asking for the Board of Finance for the money to cover the up to $2.7 million that is needed to upgrade it, but it will not be part of the grant. Does that make
Yep,
sense?
Yep, and then the upgrade includes, classrooms in the middle school and the gym area? And the reason why I keep on bringing up gym is that's where they do their graduation, that's where they do their concerts, their plays, that's kind of a center for many gatherings and sports there, and currently it doesn't have air conditioning, so.
Brian, do you want to speak to that? Because I'm not seeing it right here on the middle school. We have the boiler blend control upgrade, replace the second floor unit with DOAS, building automation, replace the existing rooftop HV with DOAS equipment. On page 5.
So it is in there. So essentially, if you look at page 13, it is on page 5. But when you look at 13, it talks about replacing the HV units with DOAS units, and the DOAS piece adds the AC piece to it. So, and just to be very clear, and I think, Patty, you said the same thing, but this conversation has no impact on the 23-24 budget in any way. So just to be very, very clear, this has nothing to do with the 23-24 operating or capital budget. So,
Thank you for reminding me.
Did that get you, Brian?
Yes, all said, thanks.
Terry?
I'm in complete agreement. The only thing I had a question on was with regard to the types of units that we are putting in. Should all this pan out the way we want it to, are those units easily converted to natural gas? Since we are having that pipeline put in straight down, and eventually it's all going to be built out, are they easily converted?
So the actual type of unit and everything will be kind of discussed when we get a little bit closer during the design phase, I think is what Scott said. And we did talk about the natural gas as well, to see about the conversion or what we can do for that.
Yeah, I mean, if we can, if eventually we could, realize savings from that, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. Trace?
Nothing, I agree with everybody.
Okay. With that said, is there a motion to approve the scope of work as discussed for the East Haddam School District Indoor Air Quality and HVAC project to include grant-ready documents for the East Haddam Elementary School and Nathan Hale Ray High School, and design development documents for improvements to the Nathan Hale Ray Middle School?
So moved.
Second,
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? A motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.